As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the tranquil meadow, a young woman named Alara took a deep breath. She stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. Today was the day she had been training for, the day she would finally attempt the impossible, to fly. With a quick glance back at her village, nestled snugly in the valley below, Alara closed her eyes and let the wind rustle through her hair. The time had come. With a running start, she leaped off the cliff, feeling the cool rush of air against her face as she spread her arms wide. For a moment, she was weightless, suspended in the air like a bird. The world around her seemed to slow down as she soaked in the breathtaking view of the rolling hills and glistening river below. But as quickly as the euphoria had come, panic set in. She was falling, plummeting towards the ground at an alarming speed. Desperately, she began to flap her arms, willing herself to defy gravity. And then, something miraculous happened. Alara felt a surge of energy coursing through her veins, a power she had never known before. With a newfound sense of determination, she pushed against the air, feeling it lift her higher and higher. She was flying. Tears of joy filled her eyes as she soared through the sky, free as a bird. The wind whispered in her ears, a symphony of freedom and possibility. She danced among the clouds, reveling in the sensation of being truly alive. All the doubts and fears that had held her back for so long melted away, replaced by a fierce sense of purpose. As the night sky enveloped her, painting the world in shades of indigo and silver, Alara knew that her life would never be the same again. She was no longer bound by the constraints of the earth. She was a creature of the sky, a dreamer who dared to chase the impossible. And as she flew towards the moon, a beacon of hope in the dark expanse of the night, Alara knew that her journey was just beginning. Alice stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding in her chest. Before her, in the dimly lit room, stood a figure she never thought she would see again, her long-lost sister, Claire. It had been 10 years since their last encounter, 10 years of guilt and remorse weighing heavily on Alice's shoulders. Claire's eyes flickered with a mixture of shock and disbelief at the sight of Alice standing there, her presence a painful reminder of the past they had both tried to bury. The room was silent, the tension thick in the air, as the two sisters locked eyes for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Claire broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Alice, is it really you?" she asked, her voice filled with a myriad of unspoken emotions. Alice felt a lump form in her throat, the weight of her unsaid apologies pressing down on her. Tears welled up in Alice's eyes as she took a hesitant step forward. "Claire, I'm so sorry," she choked out, her voice filled with raw emotion. "I should have never let you go that day. I should have fought harder to keep our family together." Claire's face softened, her eyes reflecting the pain and longing that Alice knew all too well. "I've missed you, Alice," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. "I never stopped thinking about you, wondering where you were and if you were okay." As the words hung in the air between them, the walls that had been built up over the years began to crumble. Alice and Claire stood facing each other, two souls torn apart by tragedy and misunderstanding, coming face to face once again. In that moment, a sense of hope flickered in Alice's heart. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to mend the broken bonds of their past and forge a new path forward together. As the weight of years of guilt and regret began to lift, Alice reached out to Claire, her hand trembling with emotion. "Let's start over, Claire," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. "Let's make things right this time." And with tears streaming down their faces, the two sisters embraced, knowing that this was only the beginning of their journey to healing and forgiveness. With each passing day, the tension in the small town of Willow Creek grew thicker. The disappearance of young Sarah Johnson had sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone on edge. Detective James Grayson was determined to unravel the mystery and bring justice to the terrified town. As he delved deeper into the case, he uncovered a web of deceit and secrets that had been carefully hidden beneath the surface. Sarah's family appeared to be hiding something, and the more James questioned them, the more elusive their answers became. One stormy night, as James sat in his office reviewing the evidence, a sudden knock at the door startled him. Standing in the doorway was Sarah's older brother, Alex, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I know what happened to Sarah," Alex whispered, his voice barely above a breath. James felt a surge of hope and dread wash over him. He motioned for Alex to come in and take a seat, his heart racing in anticipation of finally uncovering the truth. As Alex began to speak, his words painted a chilling picture of betrayal and manipulation. He revealed that Sarah had stumbled upon a dark secret within their own family, a secret that threatened to tear them apart. Tears welled up in Alex's eyes as he confessed to his own role in Sarah's disappearance, his guilt weighing heavily on his shoulders. James listened intently, his mind racing to piece together the fragments of the puzzle that had haunted him for weeks. Just as Alex finished his confession, a deafening crash echoed through the room, causing both men to jump in alarm. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, sending a chill down James's spine. It was Sarah, her eyes wide with terror and desperation. "I knew you would find out," she whispered, her voice hauntingly familiar yet filled with an otherworldly presence. Before James could react, Sarah vanished into thin air, leaving behind a sense of foreboding that lingered in the room. As the realization sank in, James knew that there was more to this case than he could have ever imagined. The truth was far more sinister and the stakes far higher than he had anticipated. The race to unlock the secrets of Willow Creek had only just begun. As the rain poured down relentlessly, Lucy found herself standing alone in front of the old, dilapidated house. The faint light from the nearby street lamp flickered, casting eerie shadows on the decrepit structure. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, the sound of her boots echoing in the silent night. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dampness and decay. Lucy's heart pounded in her chest as she navigated the maze of dimly lit corridors, the floorboards creaking ominously beneath her. She could feel the weight of the house pressing down on her, as if it held a dark secret waiting to be uncovered. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway creaked open, revealing a small room bathed in a dim, flickering light. In the center of the room stood a figure, their back turned to Lucy. As she moved closer, she could hear the faint sound of weeping. "Who are you?" Lucy's voice quivered as she spoke. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with grief and pain. It was Charlotte, her eyes red and swollen from tears. "Lucy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain outside. "I didn't think you would come." "What happened here, Charlotte?" Lucy's voice was filled with emotion as she reached out to her friend. Charlotte collapsed into Lucy's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Between heart-wrenching sobs, she managed to choke out the words that would change Lucy's life forever. "He's gone, Lucy. They took him. They took our son." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across the sky, a sense of foreboding settled over the small town. Emily could feel it in the air as she made her way home from work, the hairs on the back of her neck prickling with unease. She quickened her pace, her heart racing with every echoing footstep behind her. Just as she turned the corner onto her street, a shadow loomed before her, blocking her path. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked up to see a figure cloaked in darkness, a wicked smile playing on their lips. "Emily," a voice hissed, sending shivers down her spine. "You thought you could escape, but you can't run from your past." Panic surged through her veins as she tried to dart around the stranger, but their grip was firm as they grabbed her arm with a strength that sent a jolt of fear through her. She struggled, fighting against the darkness that threatened to consume her. "You can't hide from what you did," the voice taunted, each word like a dagger to her heart. But just as despair threatened to overtake her, a sudden commotion erupted from the nearby alleyway. Shouts and the clatter of footsteps echoed through the night, drawing the attention of her assailant. In a moment of desperation, Emily wrenched herself free and sprinted towards the chaos, praying for salvation. What she found at the end of the alley took her breath away. Standing before her, bathed in the glow of a flickering streetlight, was a figure from her past, a figure she never expected to see again. "Tom?" she gasped, disbelief coloring her voice. He turned towards her, his eyes widening in recognition before a flicker of something else crossed his face. Regret? Anger? She couldn't tell. "Emily," he whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. I never thought I'd see you again." And in that moment, with the weight of their shared past hanging between them, Emily knew that the twist of fate had brought them together once more for a reason. As the sun began to set, casting hues of pink and orange across the sky, Emily found herself standing on the edge of a cliff overlooking the vast ocean. Her heart was heavy with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew what she had to do, yet the thought of it made her knees weak. The wind whipped through her hair, causing strands to dance around her face like restless spirits. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to muster up the courage she needed. She couldn't shake off the memories that haunted her, the betrayal, the lies, the broken promises. As tears welled up in her eyes, she clenched her fists and whispered to herself, "I am stronger than this. I am not defined by my past." With a newfound resolve, Emily took a step forward, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. The weight of her burdens felt heavier than ever, threatening to drag her down into the depths below. But then, a voice called out to her from behind. "Emily, wait!" She turned around to see Ethan running towards her, his eyes filled with desperation and something else she couldn't quite place. He reached out to grab her hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her veins. "Please, don't do this," he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. "I know I messed up, but I can't bear to lose you. I love you, Emily." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked into his eyes, searching for the truth she had doubted for so long. In that moment, she saw a vulnerability in him that mirrored her own, a raw honesty that touched her soul. Without a word, Emily stepped back from the edge of the cliff and into Ethan's embrace. The weight of her burdens lifted, replaced by a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Emily knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together, a journey filled with twists and turns, but one that she was determined to take, hand in hand, with the man she loved. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the deserted street, Sarah felt a sense of foreboding wash over her. She clutched the worn photograph in her hand, the image of a man she once loved, now a distant memory. She had followed the clues, chased leads across cities, and now she was standing in front of the abandoned house where he was rumored to be hiding. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pushed open the creaking gate and stepped onto the overgrown path leading to the front door. Each step echoed in the eerie silence, sending a shiver down her spine. The house loomed in front of her, its windows boarded up and the paint peeling from its once grand facade. With a trembling hand, Sarah raised her fist and knocked on the door. The sound echoed through the empty house, reverberating through the dusty rooms. For a moment, there was only silence, and then she heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, revealing a figure standing in the shadows. Sarah held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for the man to step into the light. And then, as he took a hesitant step forward, the dim light illuminated his face. It was him, the man from the photograph, his eyes filled with a mixture of shock and recognition as he gazed at Sarah standing before him. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of years of silence hanging between them like a heavy fog. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said her name, Sarah. Tears welled up in her eyes as she took a step closer, her voice barely a whisper. James. The emotions that had been buried deep within her for so long came flooding to the surface, overwhelming her in a wave of longing and regret. The man she had spent years searching for was now standing before her, his presence filling the empty spaces in her heart. As they stood facing each other in the fading light, Sarah knew that this meeting was just the beginning of a new chapter in their story. The twists and turns of fate had brought them back together, and now it was up to them to decide if they would embrace the second chance they had been given. As she stood on the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping through her hair, Sarah's heart was heavy with the weight of her decision. She had come so far in her quest for the truth, but now faced the ultimate test of her will. Should she jump into the unknown depths below, or turn back and live with the lingering doubts that haunted her every waking moment? Closing her eyes, she thought of the words her grandfather had whispered to her on his deathbed. Find the courage within you, Sarah. The truth will set you free. Those words echoed in her mind, pushing her to take a step forward, closer to the precipice. The sun began to sink below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the turbulent waters below. With a deep breath, Sarah made her decision. She would leap into the unknown, trusting that she would emerge stronger on the other side. As she plummeted towards the roiling sea, a sense of peace washed over her, a feeling of liberation she had never experienced before. The water enveloped her with a shock of cold, the sound of rushing waves filling her ears. Her lungs burned as she fought against the powerful current, kicking her way to the surface with all the strength she could muster. Gasping for air, she looked around and saw the shore in the distance, a beacon of hope in the fading light. As she swam towards land, every stroke fueled by determination and resilience, Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline unlike anything she had ever felt before. She was not just a survivor, she was a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. The doubts and fears that had held her captive for so long were now nothing but distant memories, fading into the background as she focused on reaching the safety of solid ground. With one final burst of energy, Sarah reached the shore, collapsing onto the sand with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. She had faced her fears head-on, defied the odds, and emerged victorious. The truth she had been seeking was not just a destination, but a journey of self-discovery, of courage and resilience that would stay with her for a lifetime. As she lay there, the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, Sarah knew that her quest was far from over. But with the strength she had found within herself, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that she was capable of overcoming anything that stood in her way. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the horizon, Sarah stood at the edge of the cliff, her heart heavy with a mix of sorrow and hope. She had come so far on this journey, facing countless obstacles and betrayals, yet she refused to give up now. The wind whipped around her, tangling her long hair and carrying the scent of salt from the distant ocean. Closing her eyes, Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself in the moment. She had one final task to complete before she could finally confront the darkness that had haunted her for so long. With a determined expression, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the ancient amulet that had guided her on this path. The glowing symbol seemed to pulse with energy, as if urging her to finally unlock its true power. As Sarah raised the amulet to the sky, a surge of energy coursed through her, filling her with a sense of purpose and strength. She knew what she had to do. With a steady hand, she began to chant the words that had been whispered to her in dreams and visions. The ancient language felt both familiar and foreign on her tongue, resonating with a power that she could barely comprehend. As she spoke, the ground beneath her began to tremble, sending cracks spiderwebbing outwards as if the very earth was responding to her call. The sky above darkened, the once vibrant colors fading into a deep, ominous shade of purple. And then, with a blinding flash of light, the amulet shattered in her hand, releasing a wave of energy that enveloped her in a blinding glow. When Sarah opened her eyes, she found herself standing in a vast chamber, the air thick with power and magic. Before her stood the source of all her struggles and pain, the dark entity that had tormented her for so long, taking on a form that was both terrifying and alluring. But this time, Sarah was not afraid. With newfound courage and determination, she stepped forward, ready to face her ultimate challenge, and finally bring an end to the darkness that had threatened to consume her soul. As Clara gazed at the shimmering lights of the city below, her heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and fear. She couldn't believe how far she had come, how much she had overcome to be standing on the rooftop of her old office building, ready to face the man who had once held her captive, both physically and emotionally. The wind whispered through her hair, carrying with it a sense of liberation and strength. She took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins, pushing her to take the final step towards her freedom. Suddenly, a voice behind her shattered the moment. "Clara, stop!" She turned around slowly, recognizing the voice that had haunted her nightmares for so long. There he was, standing with a look of desperation in his eyes. The man who had controlled her every move, who had instilled fear in her heart for years. "Please don't do this," he pleaded. taking a step closer to her. Clara felt a surge of anger rise within her, fueling her resolve. "You have no power over me anymore," she stated firmly, her voice echoing in the night. "But I love you," he whispered, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she shook her head. "Love is not manipulation. Love is not control. What you did to me was not love." With a final look of determination, Clara turned back towards the edge of the rooftop. With a deep breath, she closed her eyes and took a step forward, plunging into the unknown. The wind whipped around her, carrying her screams into the night as she fell through the darkness. But as she plummeted towards the ground, a sense of peace washed over her. She felt free, liberated from the chains of her past. And in that moment, Clara knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always have the strength to rise again, to defy the odds and overcome the darkest of moments. Because she was a survivor, and nothing could ever break her spirit again.